Quality credentialed network of on- and off-island healthcare providers, including the convenient one-stop FHP Health Center and urgent care. My family choose Take Care. Your family should also consider choosing Take Care. Call 671-647-3526 for more information. Take Care, our island, your health plan.
Happy day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
While in police custody after violating the state Islamic dress code. Fox's Kitty Logan has the latest.
Well, it's not easy to get a clear picture of what's really happening in Iran, but what is evident is that the defiance continues. Despite a government crackdown, these demonstrations are still going on. And what we saw was a very serious fire at the notorious Evin prison in Tehran, a sign that the anti-government protest movement still has that momentum, even from within prison. Gunshots were heard in videos which appeared on social media, but Iran's state media says the fire was put out, that no prisoners escaped, although around 40 people were injured. An independent human rights group says that fire started after a riot inside the prison. Those protests, of course, began following the funeral of 22-year-old Masha Amini.
President Biden issues an executive order that's geared toward reducing prescription drug costs. Fox's Tanya J. Powers reports.
The executive order gives the Department of Health and Human Services 90 days to explain how it will use new models of care and payment to cut drug costs. It comes as inflation is on the rise, driven by food, rent, and healthcare prices. Thursday's consumer price numbers showed a more than 8% increase for the 12 months ending in September, and they're growing at their fastest rate since 1981. The executive order also follows the August signing of the $430 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which authorizes the federal government to negotiate prices on some prescription drugs and cap costs for Medicare.
The Buffalo Bills defeating the Kansas City Chiefs 24-20 Sunday in a playoff rematch. Bills quarterback Josh Allen throwing a touchdown pass to Dawson Knox with just over a minute left in the game to give the Bills the lead. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes then threw an interception. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
The Point.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to Tall Tales. It is a Monday, a brand new week of Tall Tales. One more week closer to our ever-loved main host, Bob Klitzkie, returning to this seat, to this microphone. In the meantime, you have me. My name is Jose Martinez. In the production booth is Daryl Taggarty, and welcome to the program. You are listening to Tall Tales on 93.3 FM over the airwaves, KUSG, or you can stream live on Facebook.com from the Points Facebook page, or on YouTube. Just search for Tall Tales Guam. That could be the name of the page itself. I always forget. We just recently added it, a title instead of the gobbledygook of all the numbers and letters and stuff for generic channels. So look for Tall Tales Guam on YouTube, and you'll find us streaming there as well. And I want to thank all you listeners, because if it wasn't for you, for the subscribers to YouTube who bumped us past 100 subscribers, we would not have been able to get our unique URL for YouTube. So thank you very much, our esteemed international listening audience. Let's get to Jemmy Cutney. Sometime. That's pretty good. We are going over yet another editorial from Guam PDN. The Post is trying. They're posting columns, local columns. They're posting letters to the editor. They're posting guest columnists, but they're still not providing us a local editorial.
They're the Post.
Not even. You're right. That's what it is. It's just a wooden post or a cork bulletin board, and they're just knocking up other people's stuff but their own. But over the weekend we had some pretty good content that came out, especially on the debates. But I want to read today's editorial on West Care Pacific Islands program for Guam veterans, because there are a couple of items out in the news. We'll probably get through it during the week, because I want to read a little bit more up on what's going on. Our very own Neil Weird is putting his hat in the ring again, becoming the savior for another group of people who probably never asked him to. But this one is support West Care Pacific Islands program, good for Guam veterans. Guam veterans community has long struggled and suffered because of a lack of adequate services and personnel to deliver quality assistance to our former military service members. These individuals have sacrificed much to protect our nation and are deserving of the support they are promised when they take the oath to serve. But this support is not always guaranteed, and many veterans fall victim to the shortcomings and circumstances of a system that makes getting veteran services on Guam difficult. These long-standing issues often result in situations that severely affect the veteran's quality of life, from unemployment to homelessness to substance abuse and mental health problems. Our veterans often find themselves struggling through a domino effect of physical, emotional, and financial problems. Guam plays a unique role in our nation's armed forces as we have one of the highest rates of enlistment. Our men and women who serve represent our people well, often earning accolades and recognition from the top brass. Despite this, veteran services in Guam remain limited and difficult to obtain. Much has been promised from leading Veterans Affairs officials, but little has been delivered. This is why organizations like West Care Pacific Islands are such invaluable parts of our community, not just because they serve our veterans, but because they are an example of what it means to support the most vulnerable members of our community. WPI recently announced the launch of Path to Freedom, a program that was awarded $500,000 from the U.S. Department of Labor's Veterans Employment and Training Services Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program. This new initiative will allow WPI to reach out to Guam's homeless and struggling veterans to help them find meaningful employment opportunities. From job certification and employment training to even transportation services, WPI's Path to Freedom is a wraparound approach that will bring WPI's service team of case managers, employment specialists, and job developers to help our local heroes find their path to freedom. If you're a veteran or know of a struggling veteran, contact West Care Pacific Island's Path to Freedom program. And they have a phone number here at 671-472-0218 and 0219 for more information. And whenever there's more opportunities for programs for veterans, I applaud. My dad was a veteran, Vietnam War. He was also a active duty retiree. But for some reason, he really enjoyed the brotherhood of I don't know if it's the correct name, the Society of the Purple Heart, or the Purple Heart Society here on Guam. And so he really latched on to his veteran status and worked through the veterans groups here on Guam when he was here back in the early 2000s. And what was interesting is his medical care could have been taken care of greatly because of his active duty status. But when he did go to the States for his medical care, he did go through veteran hospitals, VA hospitals. And I remember him had to go to Hawaii by himself just for his basic checkups and things like that, which was very interesting. But you got to really give a hand to the Society of Purple Heart Society here on Guam. I only knew of them and some of them right before my dad passed away, but they're really great guys. Some of them are no longer with us anymore, who really helped him out. But when we have programs like this, like West Care, who does offer a lot of community services for a wide range of reasons, or for a wide range of people in the community, it's just another way of veterans getting assistance. I really hate to see some of these veterans in uniform, and hopefully it's because they served and not because of stolen valor. There's a couple of them that are on the streets right now soliciting money from drivers, and it's really interesting.
You know, over the years, I've had occasion to have to bump up against this time and time again. During the time I was working for the congressional delegate in the office here on Guam, I would have to field inquiries from veterans that were not addressed, could not be addressed by the several offices already existing to address veteran issues. And even the preceding delegate's office had trouble dealing with assisting. Well, they assisted as much as they could, but the resistance at the national level, at the national government level, was just mind-boggling. And so now you have not only about, I think there's 5 or 6 offices set up, separately funded by the federal government to address veterans' issues, and they still don't cover everything.
Right, and I think it's important. And this is not an excuse for the federal government or for the military, in the sense that, you know, our problems here on Guam, a lot of it has to do with being a remote island away from other services that are offered in the States. But they have the same issues there. I remember bringing my dad to a VA hospital in Milwaukee and just having to navigate through so much paperwork and bureaucracy just to get some simple procedures signed off on. Thankfully, though, and it almost feels like it's who you know, but when you network with people, you get to know who can do what for you. That really helps out a lot. But there's a lot of veterans out here, when they do come back, sometimes, and it's a different situation. My dad was a veteran of Vietnam, but he still served all the way up until I want to say the early 90s.
Okay.
But there was instances of veterans not coming back with the correct services that helped them integrate back into society. And I've worked with a lot of veterans. You know, we had a couple of them that worked with us also in the technology industry, the communication industry. But there's so many that serve that we can't put a a general description to everybody. And I think also the services need to be able to be flexible to be able to reach all those who are either hampered by something that happened to them overseas.
And this is the big challenge, because their needs are the same as the needs of the general population.
Yes.
However, when they turn to their government for assistance, the government says, we're going to assist you.
It's
and
an
then
interesting
they don't.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because even with my dad as a retiree, you would think, and he was an NCO, but even as a retiree, you get bumped down to the bottom of the list in the sense of priorities, because active duty they're the ones that are on the mission right now. But it's a culture that I don't want to make this about Guam in the sense
It's
that
not. It's the whole
VA
national.
network. Yeah,
Yes.
it is national. But again, kudos to West Care for providing yet another opportunity to help veterans, and we do have a good recruitment ratio here on Guam.
What I've always wondered was, why isn't it that the regular services that are being provided to people generally who need services are not being funded for veterans? It's almost as if veterans, members of the military, former members of the military, have been promised a separate system of care. And it's appropriate in some senses, especially for psychological reasons, because it's been because they are dependent, and they don't want they're dependent on military their needs being addressed in an office that is set up to address service member issues. Although they're the same health and labor and job training and other kinds of issues that people have in the community, they were promised that their assistance would come through an office that was set up just for veterans, so that everyone in the office, both the service providers and the other people being served, have the same background.
It's a culture change in the sense of the military culture. Again, I never served as active duty member. I've only been a military brat for less than half my life now, and I do know that the processes, the operating procedures are different. They do kind of blend over into the VA services, but it's a different mindset in the sense that veteran services aren't usually run by active. Well, I take that back. That's not true, because
I'm referring to the other side, not military hospitals. I'm talking about civilian hospitals, civilian labor force development, civilian job training, civilian placement, and it's a kind of a social compact with members of the service members. As upon separation, they are told that their future needs are going to be addressed through the veterans system. And they expect an office on the civilian side to be run the same as an office in the military side. And
I'm sure
civilians don't know how to do it.
No, and that's why you have
it's a lot of frustration.
Well, I believe it was in 2006 or 7 that they moved a veterans clinic off of the Naval Hospital land to right outside the gate.
Yes.
And so that might be something you're speaking of?
No. Actually, I'm going a little broader than that.
Like something that's offered at GRMC or GMH?
Yes, or mental health, behavioral health. But it has to do with expectations.
That could be the same thing as having to get paid via Medicare and Medicaid. You know, how the government pays for that, and that could be the hampering. Who really wants to deal with that? You know, it is kind of...
And it just turns out to be a mess, a parallel mess within the same government.
Yeah.
Because right now, as I mentioned, there's at least 5 separate offices being funded by the U.S.
Well, here's something that we can do as civilians, okay? And not to And I always like to say, you know, we have the government to come to help us out, but we also have ourselves. And we can't always rely on just the government to do everything or to be assistance. So, you know, our families out there, we all know who our veterans are in our families. We all know who served in our families. And reach out to them in the sense that talk to these veterans and see what's going on and try to understand that you're not there to solve their problems, but maybe sometimes just to listen to what's going on, to help assist them where they can be. My dad was very independent in the sense that he was the stubborn one that didn't really often like a lot of people to help him out, but when he got assistance, he was very grateful for it, and I think that's what we can do. And it's a mess in the government, not just here on Guam, but in the United States. But again, we have services like this, a non what do they call it? NGO that
right.
are getting federal grants. But support groups like that. Now, I got to admit, there's a lot of things about West Care that I don't agree with. But I can't have everything. But I won't get into that.
That's just one facet of what they do.
Yes, it is. There's other things that raise my eyebrow or two. Let's go to the card. I lost my card. I had it right here in front of me. First thing...
It's a thin card.
It's a thin card. It's kind of a thin card. Today we have something called Neil versus Neil. That's Neil Catal, an attorney, versus Neil Weird, our very own. And you'll see what I mean. It's also an instance of systemic racism. We all know that Paul Zerzan was woke and saw that the rice was orange. And everyone said, no, that's not true. The rice is red, and it's absolutely red. Never mind the color orange. And we all know it's not about the color of the rice or who said it. It's about the narrative. And so this new article that came out in Time magazine, and Senator Bob Klitzkie sent it to me. I found it very interesting because, Time magazine was somewhat of a periodical that I trusted as a kid growing up and as a teenager, because they had investigative reports, and they did a lot of things that were they did a lot of stories that were worldwide, not just national but worldwide. But when you start to read things that you have a little bit of knowledge on and you find out they just get it all wrong and they publish it anyways, it kind of makes you wonder what's going on. But what's going on is systemic racism. But we'll get to that when we get to that. We have Pratehi Lutekin versus The Color Pink. We finally have a public article with the comments from Dr. Wen on the vaccine that came out of the Pacific Island Times over the weekend.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a repeat of his comment, but now it's in a periodical. It's now published, other than just on social media. I also have a leftovers from last week, Mayorkas versus Some Explaining to Do. And I think, this might sound like a minor issue, and this has to do with the Border Patrol on horseback versus Haitian immigrants. But to me, I think this is indicative of what's going on in our national government right now and the Biden administration. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, this should really be gravely concerning to everybody.
I didn't know that the Marlboro man was still running around.
But he's not smoking anymore because, that's he's woke now.
I think he got cancer.
He got canceled because of that.
No, cancer.
He literally got canceled with cancer. Yes, that's right.
Yes, but they were able to revive him and put him on a horse and get him out there in front of the camera.
Yeah, but then they try to cancel him again. And then we also have, let me see where I put it here. Yeah, those three. Do I have it in here? Yep, that's it. So let's get to. But I want to read another editorial that the Pacific Daily News came out with over the weekend. I don't know. I think this was on Sunday. Our view. Debates and forums are windows to behavior, character, personality. And I think this is a pretty good summary of what's going on. The debate on debates continues. if you read the papers over the weekend.
There's no debate.
And I'm gonna opine a little bit and characterize the the influx of material written on this, which really made me chuckle a bit. So this is, again, PDN editorial, our view. I believe this is from Sunday, either Sunday or Saturday. Debates and forums are windows to behavior, character, and personality. Organized debates and forums for politicians are easily among the most important components of the public office job interview. These events are where voters get to see candidates in action, as they call on their institutional knowledge and experience and share their plans for Guam. Interestingly, during this particular Guam election season, our candidates vying for public office, namely the big-ticket gubernatorial race, have changed the rules on us. When one team declined to attend some of the forums, the opposing team announced they wouldn't share a stage at all. And so it goes. This past week, we are treated to an evolved debate setting as our gubernatorial teams follow through on their promises. At the Guam Association of Realtors Forum, the Camacho Ada team held the stage alone, answering questions without the presence of the Leon Guerrero Tenorio team. And at the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce Forum, the Leon Guerrero Tenorio took the stage alone as well, answering questions unfettered by the presence of the Camacho Ada team. In addition, Attorney General Levin Camacho was off-island, tending to previous commitments, and was unable to participate in the Guam Association of Realtors Forum. The forum was held with only his two challengers, making the overall event less valuable for the voters. And I would just like to add that neither the Women's Chamber of Commerce or the Guam Association of Realtors wrote a letter to the editor saying how this was going to be detrimental to our voters and the end of the world was coming. Kind of like the UOG, Tomorrow Speaking Group, did. But I digress. I'm still not over them doing that. Debates and forums are a way for voters to be part of the interview process, which presents a valuable opportunity for voters to see how well candidates handle themselves when the pressure is on. They are a window of insight into a candidate's personality and disposition, a live impromptu testing ground of character, confidence, and intellect. Can you articulate answers to complex policy questions about government finances, crime, and healthcare? Brochures, media statements, and produced commercials are staged, rehearsed, crafted messages, and barely scratch the surface of a candidate or team's plans. Times indeed have changed. Will this departure from traditional debates affect the outcome of this election, and will it become the norm? Voters don't need to know how well politicians can function amongst friends and allies. We need to know how hard you will fight for Guam when the odds are stacked against us. Canceled debates and one-sided forums are a disservice to voters. That being said, that's the editorial.
I have a problem. I have a big problem with that editorial.
Let's get back to it then after this break, and we'll hear from Daryl, because I'm interested in your big problem. We'll be right back with more Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. And while we're on break, why don't you go ahead and head over to PDN and vote for Pika's Best radio station, The Point. And we'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Does your physical workplace have an impact on the mental outlook of workers, their overall job satisfaction, and their productivity? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about that and what you might want to do about it. It's The Extra Point here on 93.3.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. And
now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
And welcome back. I just finished reading the editorial, Our View Debates and Forums Are Windows to Behavior, Character, and Personality that was published by the Guam Pacific Daily News over the weekend. And Daryl said you had an issue with it. I'm interested.
I read that. I'm not a fan of the newspapers, so I don't really read them that much. But over the weekend I did. And when I read that, I thought that they were making excuses. Because first off, the questions are not very hard-hitting. The questions that the media asks these candidates could be put in print. The press should be the ones challenging because that's to elicit the comments. In the debates, the questions that are being posed are just as bland as the questions that are being put out by reporters. But if you read the coverage of, say, the delegate debate, it's so shallow, it's not very extensive, and it's not very hard-hitting. And even the comments that they did, the quotes that they did put in, they didn't challenge. But I think what the PDN is getting to without saying is that they expect fireworks. They expect a candidate to interrupt the other candidate and put the other candidate on the spot. But if those positions should already be known where the conflicts are, and the press should be asking those questions, because the way that a politician works when she is an incumbent is with a staff that prepares positions and goes carefully to colleagues and makes sure that they can get the support to move an issue forward towards a resolution. Not going, into an argument in the hallway. That's not getting the work done. We've had this for decades, where people will vote for candidates because they like the way they stand up in public and defend a position. But that's
like
not
during a debate.
Like during a debate,
Yeah.
and like
I
getting
agree
into
with
an
you.
argument
Yeah.
in a debate. But that's not how the job is done. And so they often put people in who have no skills when they get to the job, because they're simply voted in because there's so many people who like that attitude. But they don't know how to do they don't know how to handle the staff and get.
Yeah, and this might
work
be a little bit too much of an analogy. I think most people already know who the candidates are, and you do know a lot from brochures and reading up on them and pamphlets and also platform sheets, right? To me, a debate is like if you've read a really good book and then somebody makes a film of it, and you go watch the film, and it's entertaining, but it's not the book, right? It's not what everybody knows, and it's not to say that it was bad, but it didn't make you like. Well, usually it makes you like the book even more, but it's not something that you would go around and say, this story is good because I saw it in a film. No, you read the book first. You learned a little bit more about it. I think the candidates, we ought to know more about our candidates despite a debate. To me, the debate is just entertainment.
But some people make their decisions,
which is interesting why they do that.
Because they want to see how they look on TV.
What I find more interesting is the debate on the debate. For instance, I haven't watched any of these debates. I'll watch the coverage of it, or I'll read the coverage of it. I wanted to see certain ones because, like the Attorney General one where they had the writing candidate Peter Santos there, which I thought was interesting because he's just a writing candidate,
and it's a different dynamic.
Exactly, but I find the communication between the campaigns. And I'm not just going to say this because I'm not a big fan of LGT campaign, but I think they come off a little whiny, and they still come off a little whiny in all their proxies coming out trying to defend why they decided to take their ball and not play with anybody anymore. You know, it's one thing for the Camacho ad campaign to not go to several of them for whatever their reasons were, but to try to pin it on some sort of identity politics thing, and then to say it's not fair, they're not going to show up at these ones, so we're not going to show up at any other forum with them. To me, that tells me more about the campaign than a debate would.
And you're right, it does. But you see, they're not being put on the spot for that. Even with this,
they thought about those responses, and that's what makes it weird.
Yeah, but even with this editorial, what the editorial's not doing is looking at what it is the press itself can do.
Yeah, I see what you mean. They could be a little bit more hard-hitting questions, not to ignite, like you said, an argument between the two candidates, but to put each candidate on the spot according to their platforms,
issue by issue.
Yeah, maybe we should volunteer to write those questions for them. I think it would be,
you know, we could have the candidates in here.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it seems like we could do a better job of asking questions. And we saw a hint of it during the pandemic when we had the press conferences, quote unquote press conferences with the governor, where there were softball questions tossed to her. And if anybody gave a question that deemed was maybe a little more difficult, I don't think we heard from them the next week, or they weren't there anymore. Chris Barnett comes to mind because he was not a part of the press conferences anymore after his, I forget what the question was, but I definitely didn't invoke a smile from the governor.
Right, and that's part of the role of the media.
Mm-hmm.
The role of the media, the role of the press, is to get those fireworks out there.
Make them uncomfortable.
But yes, but
please, media, make these candidates uncomfortable.
On issues not as a show, not posing a show. And that's kind of what I was getting at when I read that.
You're right, because the fact that they had included AG Lever Camacho, and whether you agree with what his work or not, I don't think that was even comparable to what was going on. The fact that he's off island is probably for a good reason, and he's not missing a debate. I mean, if you have a meeting in the States that has to do with the AG's office, I hope you don't cancel that so you can attend a debate. That's just my thinking.
If it's something that has to do with his work,
exactly.
It's just too bad it was scheduled 2 weeks before.
Well, then I blame
election.
the debate people for not looking at schedules, right? But I don't think it should have been added to here. But that's just my take on it. But I like the way that they put this in here because it went along with all the other letters to the editors and guest columnists that opined on the debates, and it went the usual way you would think a writer who's definitely in the camp. Well, one of them was from Roy Respicio, the campaign manager for LGBT. I'm like, come on.
Something else just came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
These debate organizers are also trying to negotiate with the content broadcasters, the broadcasters, right? The media companies and advertisers.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Advertisers. And so it's set up to be a show. It should be set up to be more informative.
Yeah. So with that, let's cease today debating about the debate because it is going in circles now.
Oh, we're not debating about the debate. They're not seeing the point.
They're not. Yeah, I can see that too. Well, let's go on to another debate. We have here Dr. Wen versus Governor Lulian Guerrero. And again, he's the only one that. Well, I'm not saying he's the only doctor. We've had Dr. Akimoto speak, maybe not directly using direct words, and I'm not saying Dr. Wen is using direct words either, but they are having a difference of opinion, and I think that's good for the island. This whole emperor has no clothes type attitude we have right now. In anytime we address the Adeloop is it's crazy to me. And that's what I think our two publications do sometimes is they ignore really what's going on and paint a rosy picture, and they won't ask the hard questions that Dr. Wen does.
And they don't pose those questions within the same articles that have the rosy,
right.
Which is what the media should do.
Mm-hmm.
Put them side by side so that people can see that there is a a qualified
And
difference
you
of
can
opinion.
always do that in a respectful way, because we do, right? We're always
Well,
respectful.
but
When
we're not medical doctors,
right?
And we weren't appointed to be chairman of the Physicians Advisory Group, and then dismissed.
And then dismissed. Wen urges DPHSS to shift focus to influenza and drop the push for COVID shots. Former medical advisor says risk of vaccine outweigh its benefits. Given that COVID-19 has reached the endemic stage, the former chief medical advisor to the governor said the Department of Public Health and Social Services must shift gears towards controlling the spread of influenza. We have already seen the severity and prevalence of influenza. The majority of admissions are patients with influenza, said Dr. Hoa Nguyen, Dr. Nguyen, former chairman of the Governor's Physician Advisory Group, or PAG. Influenza, the seasonal flu caused by a viral infection that attacks the lungs, nose, and throat, will reach its peak between December and March, Nguyen said. That's where we need to concentrate. Public health should push flu shots instead of COVID vaccine, he added. Guam Memorial Hospital last week reported a higher than usual number of pediatric admissions, attributing it to the current cold and flu season. The hospital's pediatric unit was at maximum capacity during the first weekend of October, prompting the need for additional beds. While the government continued to prod the COVID-19 shots, Nguyen warned that the risk of the vaccine outweighs its benefits. COVID-19 is now in the endemic phase with lower prevalence and very mild symptoms from the current variants. There's not much hospitalization anymore, said Nguyen, a family physician at American Medical Center. DPHSS last week reported 48 COVID-positive cases from tests done between October 11th and 14th. Guam has recorded 58,695 cases and 401 deaths since March 2020. Nguyen said the COVID-19 vaccine should be given only to individuals in the high-risk group, specifically the elderly with multiple comorbidities. I encourage those who are at high risk to talk to their physicians, he said. He said the COVID-19 vaccine should not be pushed to the general population, especially children. Nguyen warned that the COVID vaccine exposes young males from 18 to 39 years old to the risk of myocarditis, a condition that causes inflammation of the heart muscle. And where did we hear that from? The raked over the coals Surgeon General of Florida. And I'm sure he's not the only one with that opinion for the studies, but again, a lot of that's being suppressed. But all it is questions and a second opinion, right? That's something we always should be looking for.
That's also relative risk.
Yes.
So these are risk assessments in two different points in time.
True, but a lot of stuff was also suppressed. Now it's not being suppressed. If this was a year ago, he would have been canceled. He would have been marked dead to me on social media. Twitter would have banned him. As physicians, we have to be cautious because we are the ones responsible for the patients, he said. Nguyen stepped down as chairman of the Physicians Advisory Group in protest of the Guam governor's latest, that's Governor Lulian Guerrero's latest directive that pits the vaccinated against the unvaccinated. Despite the low number of cases, Guam's public health emergency has been extended to November 5th. It's not related to public health. It's related to finances, Nguyen said. Restrictions have been lifted around the world. We've had big social gatherings where people don't wear masks. Quarantine requirements have been dropped. DPHSS continues to endorse Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines for children 6 months and older, offering incentives such as gift certificates to encourage shot series completion and boosters while supplies last. As of September 21st, a total of 140,108 eligible residents 6 months and older are fully vaccinated. On September 2nd, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommended the use of new bivalent formulations of Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna mRNA COVID-19 vaccines as a booster dose. People who completed the series for Moderna and Pfizer will need one booster for travel purposes due to some countries' requirements, Nguyen said. This booster needs to be given at least 14 days prior to travel. Meanwhile, DPHSS reported that Guam has received an additional 200 doses of Novavax COVID-19 vaccine, which has been approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for emergency use authorization. Officials said the Novavax vaccine will be available at the DPHSS Northern Region Community Health Center in Dededo. The Novavax vaccine is a 2-dose primary series with 3 to 8 weeks between dose 1 and dose 2, the department said. Currently, the Novavax vaccine is not authorized for any booster dose. And additionally, individuals who complete their primary series with 2 doses of Novavax vaccine are not eligible for a booster dose at this time. And that is Nguyen versus the governor. There is no need for a public health emergency, and I think we all know why that's continuing. We've heard cries from some officials, especially in her department, saying it's all about the money. And we know that other states and territories have been able to continue on with regular life without having a health emergency, but still addressing the pandemic or the virus itself. Okay, let's see, what time is it? 4:48. Let's go to another break, and then we'll be right back with more Tall Tales. Don't go away. My name is Jose Martinez. You're listening to Tall Tales here on 93.3 FM. KUSG, The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, and we want to keep it that way. Voting for Pika's best radio station is on and underway. If you've already voted for The Point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend and share your votes with all The Point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
We're back. It's 4:49 in the afternoon. You're listening to Tall Tales. We are also streaming on Facebook, Daryl. Did you know that? And not only are we streaming on Facebook, we're also streaming on YouTube. I don't normally go to YouTube to see if there's any comments there because I'm not exactly familiar with how we can. Ray does it all the time. It doesn't look like anyone's here. We've had a couple of people come in, but most of our live streaming viewership comes through Facebook. So I want to say hi to everybody that's on here, including Lonnie Salas, Bonnie Suba, who has called in before, John, JP. I'm always going to pronounce this wrong because I pronounce everything wrong. Mospahaki, and comes on every now and then. And let's see, Banidosu Tao Tao, which is a pseudonym for somebody who is in Facebook jail. He's always on here. That's incognito, or her, he, she, or they. They haven't announced their pronouns yet. Oh dear. Boom, boom. Jose Tapago Jr. and lots of other people here that I'm looking up through. Hi, Bertha, Mazda Cruz, Harvey Enga, who said the AG debate should have been rescheduled. Let's go from the very top here. Rico Blancafor, who was always here, who's always promoting Tall Tales. He was one of the first ones to grab a I'm a Tailgater t-shirt. He's in the Rogues Gallery. He sent one that's similar to the bearded guy shirt picture, whoever that is. But then he got one with his face, so that was good. So we can see his full mug. Edward Bendicho, did I pronounce that right? Half a day. I don't think I've seen you here before, so welcome to Tall Tales. If you have, welcome back. Mark S. Cruz, always waving to us. Brad Wood, who we heard from his wife, Lucia, I think on Friday. She was a bit triggered by me, but not so much. They're easygoing people. Let's see here. Donna Mila Martinez, who are you? Sandra Regis, you asked a question on the chat, and I want to say thank you, Sandra, for practicing your right as a citizen and filling out FOIA requests. Don't ever be afraid to fill out FOIA requests. Just make sure you do it correctly so that they don't dance or skirt around the issue. She asked for some, and it was a little bit of public. She asked for some documents according to some trips that the governor had made, I think in 2021. And they're a good question. They're a good request because, there was a time where we were locked down and we weren't supposed to travel anywhere. And we had received some pictures from that trip that weren't too official looking. And remember, we're mandated to wear masks and everything here. And every one of those pictures of her showed no social distancing and no wearing masks. So apparently...
Who took the pictures?
Probably some of her staffers. Probably for people who were attending it also. It was like, oh, look, the governor of Guam is here. Oh, look, she's dancing with everybody. Oh, look, she's hanging out and all this other stuff. And here on Guam, we have our masks on. We're social distancing. Things are closed. We can't even go to restaurants and places.
That's why we have elections and campaigns.
But people seem to forget that, especially our media, who are supposed to be reporting on these things, these counter messages that were happening during the time. Yeah, so thank you everybody for tuning in. I want to get to real quick before we go to the top of the hour, the big halftime show. We will get to the Hope Cristobal audition piece, maybe for the next couple of weeks.
And that'll be right after the top of the hour.
Right after the top of the hour. Right now, I want to get to Putehi versus the color pink.
Hear, hear.
This was an article that came in the PD, and there's been several articles talking about this open detonation. When you go on social media, when they're posting these articles, a lot of people are mistaking these open detonation areas as as the same or equal to the open burn pits that were happening or still happening maybe in the Middle East, wherever the U.S. military was stationed or had an encampment. And from what we're being told, from what the military is telling us, and from what's actually happening, they are not the same thing at all. I think the only thing that's congruent is things are burning. But the open burn pits that are happening, that happened overseas, are completely different from what's happening here at Taragi. So the military, open detonation, safest option for World War II explosives. The military is analyzing alternatives to the open detonation of ordnance at Taragi Beach, but officials say it's doubtful that other safer technologies are viable for the emergency disposal of leftover World War II explosives that make up the bulk of detonations. Even as the Department of Defense reduces and continues to explore ways to minimize its reliance on open burn and open detonation, DoD will likely always require the capability to use that's open burn and open detonation to safely meet mission requirements. Anderson Air Force Base 36th Civil Engineer Squadron Commander Lieutenant Peter Cho wrote to Guam Environmental Protection Agency Director Walter Leon Guerrero in June. A copy of the letter was given to the newspaper by Joint Region Marianas on Thursday. Guam EPA is currently reviewing a permit application for the open burn and detonation range inside the Anderson fence. Based on the letter, the agency has already asked Anderson to perform a risk analysis of the ranges, examine alternate disposal technologies, and close the inactive burn unit in compliance with the updated U.S. EPA guidelines. An analysis of alternative technologies is ongoing, but according to Show, it's unlikely that other disposal methods identified by U.S. EPA will work for World War II-era ordnance that's routinely unearthed on Guam. Alternative technologies are optimized for unspent, expired munitions that are old but in good condition, not for 80-year-old munitions that have been fused, fired, and did not operate as intended and exposed to the elements, which are generally in very poor condition, Cho wrote. The increased storage and handling involved with alternative disposal technology dramatically increases the possibility of unintentional detonation. Additionally, while the Anderson detonation range is permitted through Guam EPA and subject to Federal Resource Conservation and Recovery Act guidelines, the emergency ordnance detonations that make up the bulk of activity at the range are exempt from the regulations. According to Cho, routine munitions disposal performed under the permit only occur around 2 or 3 times a year. He stated that an analysis of viable alternatives would be given to Guam EPA once complete. As for now, inactive open burn unit, Cho stated that the required cleanup necessary to close it out will likely be impeded by the detonations that occur nearby. While Anderson can agree not to operate it for now, it may need to dispose of future hazardous wastes, he wrote. Cho cites the closure plans for the ranges, which notes that the explosive ordnance disposal range will likely have to be maintained until Anderson is closed. The range is currently the only site on Guam where World War II ordnance is disposed, PDN files show. As for an analysis of the site's impact, Cho said a historical review of data compiled from open burn and open detonation at Taragi will be performed. As stated above, it is our belief that permitted OD operations at Anderson Air Force Base are safe and protective of the environment, he wrote. Guam EPA, in a statement last week, said there is no timeline for a decision to be made on the Taragi application. Local activist group Protehi Latekan Save Ritidian has been lobbying for the denial of the permit to Anderson. When asked about Guam EPA's required analysis of alternatives, Protehi Latekan member Maneka Flores was unsatisfied. In the meantime, Anderson continues to operate under an expired permit, doing things without any sort of monitoring. They're doing open detonation. Just last week, we saw pink smoke rising from the jungles near Taragi Beach, and it was incredibly alarming. Isn't this Breast Cancer Awareness Month?
Yes.
Okay. Just saying. I'll finish this up. There's not much to it. When we return, you're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. We're going to the big halftime show and then the Hope Cristobal audition piece. Don't go away. We'll be right back. And with the Rogues Gallery.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
More explosions rock Ukraine. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. Several loud explosions hitting Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv Monday morning. Kyiv's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, said the central Shevchenko district had been struck. This comes as Ukraine still waits for the U.S. and its allies to send over air defense systems they say are necessary to defend against Russian forces.
Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S., Oksana Makarova, said on CBS Face the Nation, it's critical that those defenses come through.
Because we do need to secure as many places in Ukraine as possible, as many children in Ukraine as possible from Russian rockets.
Russian retaliation for destruction of a bridge to Crimea was targeted at civilian sites, forcing citizens to take cover in subway tunnels.
Fox's Gernal Scott. With the midterm elections fast approaching, crime is one of the leading issues among voters in New York. Fox's Alexis McAdams reports.
Crime in New York City is up more than 31% over the past 5 years, according to the NYPD. That includes murder, rape, and robbery. Those are pretty alarming numbers, and they're one of the main topics driving voters to the polls here in New York.
Republican Representative Lee Zeldin says he's running for governor due to what he refers to as pro-criminal laws. Governor Kathy Hochul denouncing Zeldin on his abortion views and connection with former President Trump. Florida State House of Representatives candidate Kyan Michael tells Fox News Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo how her son was killed by an illegal immigrant.
We are just like every other American family. Brandon was on his way to cash his paycheck. That's when a twice deported illegal who did not care about abiding by our laws, probably could not read our traffic signs. He plowed and ran into our son, causing his car to flip and killing him.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis endorsing Michael in her election bid. America is listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to nectar, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
A fentanyl bust in Florida leads to several arrests. Fox's Jonathan Seri has the story.
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement says it has disrupted a major fentanyl trafficking operation with connections to drug cartels in Mexico. FDLE agents arrested 24 people and are looking for an additional suspect. Investigators seized 15,000 fentanyl pills and more than 380 pounds of other drugs. Authorities say the ringleader was a Florida prison inmate who gave instructions to gang members on the outside to traffic drugs and weapons through a complex criminal network. Mexican drug cartels often obtain their ingredients from China and then smuggle fentanyl across the U.S. southern border.
The shutdown of several exhibits at a Nebraska zoo caused by a case of bird flu. Fox's Ted Lindner with more.
The closures at Omaha's Henry Dorley Zoo came after one of its pelicans died from the highly pathogenic avian bird flu. The zoo also said a second pelican became ill on Friday and was euthanized. The Omaha Zoo is one of many zoos across the country that's taken extra precautions to protect their birds from the virus, as the outbreak has begun to make a resurgence this fall. More than 47 million chickens and turkeys have been slaughtered already this year to limit the spread.
The Philadelphia Eagles remain undefeated.
The Philadelphia Eagles soar to 6-0.
Second and 8, rush, downfield, CeeDee Lamb open, it's underthrown, and it's scooped and intercepted.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson with his second interception of the night, audio courtesy of NBC. The Eagles defense picking off Dallas Cowboys quarterback Cooper Rush 3 times as Philly downs their NFC East rival 26-17. Jalen Hurts with 2 touchdown passes in that victory as the Eagles remain the lone undefeated team in the NFL, starting the season 6-0 for the 3rd time in franchise history. The Cowboys slipped to 4-2.
That's Fox's Matt Napolitano. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lozama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Bournemouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
And that was the Tailgater Rogues Gallery, Tall Tales Rogues Gallery, brought to you from the many listeners and fans of Tall Tales, sporting their I'm a Tailgater t-shirt that could be obtained by going to www.thepoint.gu and clicking on the link of the t-shirt, and it'll bring you to a local link where you can order a t-shirt that says I'm a Tailgater. Put it on, take a selfie, send it to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255, and you too could be added to the Rogues Gallery. If you were paying attention, I finally was able to put Tomas's mugshot in rotation.
Finally.
Well, somebody sent me another version of the picture, because for some reason I was able to put the original one he sent on, and I don't know if it was a format issue or whatever. I usually can check to see what it is and convert it over to a format I can use, but I'm using my iPhone and the apps on there, and sometimes with the apps, everything is kind of automatic. You just drag and drop, and you don't worry about the technicalities. Like, if I was working on a PC or something, I could do that, but that's neither here nor there. We got it in. He's in the rotation. His mugshot's there. He's guilty.
He buttonholed me a couple of weeks ago and asked why he was not
really?
on. Yes.
Well, you know what I was doing was right after the Rogues Gallery play, I would put his picture there at the end of it, because I was able to get the still shot, just not into the slideshow. But we're there now. And
he was one of the first, actually.
Oh, yeah?
He had sent it maybe 3 weeks earlier.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's why he buttonholed me and asked if there was something I could do.
Okay.
But then when I came in, you said you were already trying to get it in.
Yeah.
You were aware it was there.
Yeah. Tomas, thank you for reaching. I know that you reached out to me as well. For the most part, when you send the pictures in, Ray Gibson is the first one to view it. And if he's able to send it to me, he can. There's so many people that send a lot of messages and memes and all sorts of things on the Points WhatsApp, and we want to thank you guys for sending everything in, including these great sunset and sunrise pictures. They're just amazing, and it just makes me grateful for being here on this island, because you don't really see that on other parts of the world, and I'm going to say nowhere else except for Guam. Only on Guam do we see those pictures, right?
There
right.
is a theory, and that is that the best sunsets are at 13 degrees north and 13 degrees south latitude. And it has to do with the angle of the sun on the atmosphere.
And is that the area we're in?
Yes.
We're
at 13.
There you go. And I agree with that theory. It's a fact. You heard it right here on Tall Tales.
Oh, it's like, it's the same theory as, how do you get a rainbow from the spray from the car in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, there's an angle. It's like 22 degrees.
And does that rainbow identify with pronouns he, she, they, or both?
LGBTQ
I don't know.
Plus.
What we do have, though, is a audition tape from the esteemed Hope Cristobal. The running for the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize is over. She was a candidate for it. What we're showing occurred at a Black Lives Matter protest where Hope was confronted by a Paul Zerzan, and the following ensued. So without further ado, Daryl, you got the audio?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization. The same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. We need to just do different. We need to do better. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw, how sige judo ni tano, di tau how, wahu bini tau, wahu bini madahoga, wahu a short na kai kitu bini, hagu tajan a short bini. What's on you? You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please pause this.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not your place.
When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, partner. Please leave. No, you didn't want to leave.
What happened to him?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. Ay, mamalo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
So just
Okay, enough of that. That was Hope Cristobal and her fighting off of the many protesters, according to her, the many counter-protesters bravely doing so at the Black Lives Matter rally that occurred a couple of years ago. Yeah, and it leads into the next thing here on the card.
She looks so self-satisfied. This is where you stop the video.
And this,
that
right.
freeze frame, yeah.
Freeze
frame.
frame.
That's a good snapshot. Yeah.
This one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, the more you hear, I mean, it was an unfortunate turn of events that happened. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what occurred there as far as what she was doing there. But the exchange between her and the microphone, because I think Paul just left, didn't get a word in edgewise. I don't even know what his words were before. But I found it also interesting that the crowd, there's this mob mentality happened with words that it trickled over to the speaker. And I doubt they even knew what was going on. But because of systemic racism, they already in their minds had an idea of what the truth was. And so they decided to pronounce that truth over the microphone because they're the righteous ones.
System.
Yeah, the PA system. And asked an individual to leave because they did not agree with him. Apparently that one person was dangerous for that whole crowd there. But I digress. Let's move on to this thing in the card called Neil versus Neil. And this is written by a person. This came from Time Magazine, and this was written by a person named Neil Catal, who is let's see who they said he was. I think I cut that off from the article.
Neil Katyal?
Katyal, is that it? Katyal?
Yes,
Katyal.
yes.
An attorney.
I'm familiar with him as a frequent commenter.
Yeah, okay.
And so, yeah.
It says here is the Paul and Patricia Saunders Professor of National Security Law at Georgetown University and a partner at Hogan Lovells. He previously served as acting Solicitor General of the United States.
Yeah.
And I named this versus Neil Weird because I think he's trying to go up as a savior complex, but not as much as Neil Weird has in past writings. When Bob said this to me, his comment was, "It's incredible how commentators find racism where there is no racism," and you'll understand what he means when you read this, because I'm surprised also, not really surprised. It's frustrating to hear this rhetoric come out of people who seemingly are scholars and intellectuals in academia, but they love to tout the intellectual dishonesty just to put out their.
Well, let's hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it. And I may have already painted the picture that you guys are going to hear it the way I hear it, but it's not hard. The ghost of Dred Scott still haunts us. In the annals of bad Supreme Court decisions, one stands head and shoulders above the rest. Dred Scott versus Sanford, a ruling that African Americans could never become citizens of the United States. One of our country's proudest moments was when the 14th Amendment replaced Dred Scott with an express constitutional guarantee that all persons born in the U.S., regardless of race, are full and equal citizens of this great nation. And from an amateur armchair perspective, the Dred Scott case was about property and how slaves were property, and therefore had to be returned to.
It's almost like the Citizens United case.
Right. Close. Unfortunately, a recent federal court of appeals decision breathed a new life into Dred Scott's odious notion of race-based citizenship. In Fitzsimmons versus United States, the 10th Circuit held that people born in America, Samoa, and other U.S. territories have no constitutional right to birthright citizenship. That's the sentence. Now you see why I'm looking at
three things that are incorrect in that one sentence.
Yeah. Remember, he is the Paul and Patricia Saunders Professor of National Security Law, Georgetown University Law Center. I'm reminding the audience. That's why he's going up against Neil. I think he's trying to compete with him. Instead, it said, okay, I'm going to repeat that sentence. In Fitzsimmons versus United States, the 10th Circuit held that people born in America, Samoa, and other U.S. territories have no constitutional right to birthright citizenship. Instead, it said the Constitution allows the government to classify all those born in America, Samoa as non-citizen nationals. This second-class status as nationals yet not citizens mean American Samoans lack basic rights the rest of us enjoy, including the ability to vote and to serve on juries. This week, notice he omits the history of America Samoa. This week, the Supreme Court will decide whether to review and potentially reverse the 10th Circuit's decision in Fitzsimmons. The justices should take this opportunity to enforce the enduring promise of the 14th Amendment and finally banish Dred Scott to the constitutional grave where it belongs. Yes, but the 14th Amendment already did that. This matter is personal to me. I represent Lynn Jackson and Belinda Torres Mary. It's personal now, not legal, who filed amicus brief urging the Supreme Court to take up Fitzsimmons. Ms. Jackson is the great-great-granddaughter of Dred and Harriet Scott and the founder of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. Ms. Torres Mary is the great-granddaughter of Isabel Gonzalez, a Puerto Rican woman whom the Supreme Court wrongly failed to recognize as a U.S. citizen nearly a century ago. Together, they are standing alongside their forebears to protect the idea, enshrined in the crystal-clear text of the 14th Amendment, that no government or official can ever impose racial limits on birthright citizenship and establish a second class of unequal Americans, except for when those citizens did it themselves. But I digress. We should all take pride in the 14th Amendment. It is one of the crown jewels of our Constitution. The text connects the promise of the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal to a constitutional commitment that all those born on U.S. soil, regardless of their race, have the right to share in the equality as full and equal citizens. This is a device here that authors use when they want to distract from what the real message is that they're trying to muddy up and fog. When they tout something that everybody knows, they tout something that's not even a direct, not even a passive animosity towards his argument. It's like nobody's saying that he's wrong on this 14th Amendment, and no one's saying anything against the Declaration of Independence. He just puts it in there so that people are like, yeah, you're right. And then his next sentence is going to try to connect to that.
His so far, his comment sounds like it is intended for a general audience, not
an ignorant audience.
It's not for the court. He couldn't take this argument into a court; he'd be laughed out.
He'd be destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah, and he can't. And as you're saying it in front of the rest of us here in radio listener land, we know how far off the mark he is.
Far off. But we're going to continue because it just gets better. The Supreme Court is no stranger to that pride. As Justice Jackson explained at oral argument just last week, the 14th Amendment built on the protection in the Civil Rights Act of 1866 to give a constitutional foundation for a piece of legislation that was designed to make people who had less opportunity and less equal rights to white citizens. As Justice Thomas similarly recognized earlier this year, the 14th Amendment's guarantee of birthright citizenship forever closed the door on Dred Scott. Sadly, when it comes to the U.S. territories, our nation and our courts have not always lived up to the 14th Amendment's noble ideals. In 1904, the Supreme Court, The Supreme Court had the opportunity to fully enforce the 14th Amendment's promise of citizenship and equality in U.S. territories. My client's ancestor, Isabel Gonzalez, was born in Puerto Rico and traveled to New York in hope of opportunity, only to be detained at Ellis Island as an alien immigrant. When Isabel's case reached the justices, she argued that she was a citizen of the United States, not an alien. Yet instead of declaring Isabel a citizen, the Supreme Court punted. The court ruled only that Isabel Gonzalez was not an alien within the narrow meaning of the relevant immigration statute. The decision invited the federal government to deem Americans born in territories non-citizen nationals. And that result is precisely the kind of second-class status to which Dred Scott had consigned African Americans, but which the 14th Amendment forbids for all Americans. Again, Dred Scott was about property, not necessarily about citizens or even a second-class status. Excuse me real quick.
And not even about whether these were incorporated territories like New Mexico and
Right.
Alaska and even Hawaii.
Okay, let me see here. Instead of declaring Isabel a citizen, the Supreme Court punted. The decision invited the federal government to deem Americans born in territories non-citizen nationals, and that result is precisely the kind of second-class status to which Dred Scott had consigned African Americans, but which the 14th Amendment forbids for all Americans. It is no surprise then that the ghost of Dred Scott haunts the 10th Circuit's decision in Fitzsimonu. No, it doesn't. Without properly confronting the text, history, or purpose of the 14th Amendment, the Court of Appeals ruled that Congress has the unilateral power to deny birthright citizenship in U.S. territories like America Samoa. Does this guy not know history? Or can he not ask anybody in America Samoa?
Apparently not.
That holding echoes some of the most infamous words in Dred Scott. Again, the notion that a group of Americans could have had no rights or privileges but such as those who held the power and the government might choose to grant them. The Supreme Court is now presented with a clear choice. The court can deny review and once again allow the political branches to run roughshod over the promise of the 14th Amendment, or the court can enforce the constitutional promise denied to Dred Scott, Isabel Gonzalez, and so many in America Samoa today. All those born in the U.S., regardless of race, creed, or color, are full and complete citizens. No kidding. No kidding, and I don't think anyone is disputing that, except for people in America Samoa, because
their chiefs and their chiefs decided that they would not become American citizens. They would become a protectorate.
It's amazing how he omits that big, huge, glaring fact that changes his whole rhetoric.
So he's trying to outdo Neil.
He's trying to outdo Neil. And again, Bob is right. You interject racism into it, and you just go off. And you can say anything you want. As long as you claim race, you can say anything you want. And I bet you there's a lot of people reading this without the background knowledge of American Samoa, nodding their heads and agreeing. And it's disgusting, quite frankly.
But these points will come up in the legal discussion.
Yeah.
Because the status of the citizens of American Samoa.
Something like this will never get marked as disinformation or fake news in social media or any other places, because it toes the line of systemic racism of what everybody knows.
Well, you
is
see,
true.
it's being publicized and it's being reviewed publicly, and we can point it out as disinformation. But if we were to have a company decide what was disinformation, or the government decide what's disinformation, that'd be another matter.
Right. And so that's it. That's the Neil. You have some competition. However, Neil has moved on to other pastures. Like now he's going to.
You can't go too far away
Yeah.
if it's been appealed to the Supreme Court.
And we have candidate Pete Santos on the line to talk about another Neil. Neil, how do you say his last name again? Katyal. Good afternoon, Pete. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Hey, good afternoon. I want to talk about the third Neil.
There's three knees?
Well, the third Neil is actually do nothing, leaving Camacho.
Oh boy!
You know, he intervened in that case. Him and his general counsel Stephanie Mendiola. And the way I see it, you know, he did it because Neil Weir's his bestie, right? But if you read the statute on the Attorney General, that's prohibited. He's not supposed to be, getting involved in things that have nothing to do with Guam.
What was his interest?
It's his best friend that's filed the case, so he's got to come to his best friend's. You got to back your buddies up, right?
The case you're talking about is a Fitzsiamanu case.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They wrote briefs for it.
Wow.
Their names are on it. Stephanie Mendiola and Levin. And so if you look at the statute on the Attorney General of Guam, nowhere are they authorized to do that. And so instead of doing things like fighting crime, prosecuting criminals, we're off
the
chasing
people of Guam.
Yeah, we're off getting involved in the internal affairs of American Samoa because that's more important, you know.
Especially when they never asked for it.
Right. That's the thing that I've been mentioning ever since. And I even posed that question to the third Neil at the forum when I was there with Uncle Bob. I was like, even if you're correct, which you're not, this is the way I said it. Even if you're correct, which you're not, why not just heed the wishes of the people who are affected, the American Samoan people?
Right.
Why not just listen to them?
Right.
Right, and that's the definition. That's the textbook definition of saviorism.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know better for you, old man and old woman, than you know. I know better what's better for you than you know. So eat this medicine. Little did I know that medicine is good for me, but not good for them, and it kills them.
And there's some strange relationship between these anti-colonial type rhetoric people using the 14th Amendment to pseudo-colonize a group of people that never asked for it.
Right.
And I don't know if they get that. I'm not sure. Or maybe they do, but the end game is more important.
Yeah, but I floated something that's a little bit more cynical to Uncle Bob, and I'll repeat it here. It's like maybe Neil Weir is pretending to fight for them, but he's really just trying to destroy whatever cultural rights they have left. So he's Trojan horsing. He's Trojan horsing them.
Right.
I'm going to save you, but my real intent is to erase all benefits you already have.
Well, then the CNMI.
Or not all benefits you already have, but all benefits you've managed to hold on to.
Then the CNMI should be concerned as well. And
yeah,
they
are. They joined. They joined in opposition to Neil Weir. So it's the CNMI and American Samoa who have skin in the game and who know and understand the history and know and understand the legal arguments and ramifications. And they joined in and they said, hey, knock it off. And Neil Weir is like, oh, you really don't know what you're talking about. I know what's better for you than you do. Come on.
But what also seems to be a distraction to this is, and I always have a hard time pronouncing her last name. Also, the representative or the delegate from Samoa, Radewagen. She came on this show and was invited by Bob Klitzkie, and she talked very directly about how she does not want this case to follow through or to be successful because it goes against the wishes of America Samoa. But at the same time, she had to interject the whole racism rhetoric about insular cases, about the old language, and what did you talk about again? The presentism?
Presentism, yeah.
Right. And it just completely railroaded her argument.
And, she even, not only did she say this on Uncle Bob's show, but at the federal or at the congressional hearings, she said, without any minced words, we hope that this, loss would be left at as is when they lost or when it got decided against them, right? And she said, please stop, don't pursue this on behalf of the American Samoan people. Please, we ask you to respect us. But then Neil was like, oh no, I don't need to respect your wishes because you really don't know what you're doing, and let me be the one to decide for you what's good for you.
Amazing.
So, yeah, and leaving alone Camacho, leave everything alone Camacho, has joined in with Neil Weir because he doesn't have anything to do on Guam. He doesn't have to go after corruption. He doesn't have to go after corporate bad practices. He doesn't have to go after criminals.
Well, on the merits of the case of Fitzsimonu, that has to do with citizenship rights and 14th Amendment. How does that affect Guam? Because we are citizens and we are not second-class citizens. I don't even know what that means.
It doesn't, because the Organic Act has extended the 14th Amendment to us.
Right.
And we have a mirror. We have a mirror image of the Bill of Rights. So, again, why is the Guam Attorney General involved with his general counsel? Why are they involved in the Fitzsimonu case? Because that's his best friend. And you know what? It shows that he's protecting his best friends. This is not the only case where it involved a friend of his and seems to be protecting him.
Yep. Okay.
Or going to bat for him.
Well, we're at the bottom of the hour. Pete, thanks for calling in and clarifying a couple of things. And you are close to this. You've been following this for a long time, long before you became or declared yourself a writing candidate. So I appreciate your call in. And all right, we'll talk to you soon. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. We're going to the 7th inning stretch, and we'll be right back with more Tall Tales after this.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Does your physical workplace have an impact on the mental outlook of workers, their overall job satisfaction, and their productivity? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about that and what you might want to do about it. It's The Extra Point here on 93.3.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, and we want to keep it that way. Voting for Pika's best radio station is on and underway. If you've already voted for The Point, thank you. If not, there's still time to get yours in. We're honored that many of you have nominated us again, and we'll keep looking for ways to keep you informed, up to date, and entertained. Fox News, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie and all the great talk shows from around the USA. Tell a friend. and share your votes with all the Point's super advertisers. Thanks from all the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Seventh inning stretch, 2 more innings to go before the end of today's episode of Tall Tales. It is 5:36. My name is Jose Martinez. Thank you, Daryl, for stepping in.
Yeah.
In my place.
Yeah. You know, during the break, I was taking a look at something. Oh, yeah, I'll let that go ahead and run. I was taking a look at something, the Organic Act of Guam, and it says that. Let's see. There is a Bill of Rights, and then it goes down and says the following provisions of and amendments to the Constitution of the United States are hereby extended to Guam to the extent that they have not been previously extended to that territory, and shall have the same force and effect there as in the United States or in any state of the United States. It goes down, Then the First to Ninth Amendments inclusive, the 13th Amendment, the second sentence of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, and the 15th and 19th Amendments. Not everything applies. And Congress says that that these provisions apply to Guam, although they have enumerated the Bill of Rights in the Organic Act, which itself is a law that's subject to amendment. It's not; these are not rights in the Constitution.
Not automatic.
No, they say the intent is to include only those select portions of the Constitution to Guam. They did not apply before. The status of the residents of Guam before the Organic Act was similar to the nationals in American Samoa, except they were actually one step beyond us because they had expressed an interest in becoming a protectorate of the United States through their
But remaining nationals only.
through their chiefs, and there's a treaty. There was no treaty between the people of Guam as of 1898, or even as of 1950. There is no treaty between the people of Guam and the United States. So there is absolutely, this is apples and oranges. You know, they have nothing to do, they are not the same status, and there's no decision that would be made by the Supreme Court that would touch on Guam at all.
But that doesn't push the narrative or the rhetoric, and that's why this makes it confusing. I think those who are doing the confusion do it intentionally for the end game, for the narrative. It should be alarming to most people who enjoy their status right now as citizens, or who think that things are going to remain well. There always will be somebody who can mess it up for everybody because they think they want to save the world, and what they're really doing is just pushing an agenda.
Making a career.
Making a career out of it.
Yes, making a career out of it.
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that, but that's what it really seems like, because, again, Neil Weir has moved into another realm of a group of quote-unquote victims that he may need to save.
Well, you know, there are politicians who do this all the time. You know, they're good at campaigning. They have a winning smile, and you know they look
and then they become president.
And then they become incumbents, and then we don't get any performance out of them.
Well, here's something that's maybe a little connected to the rhetoric, because it does again promote this systemic racism, this notion that it's always about racism. And I'm going to get to Mayorkas versus some explaining to do. Mayorkas
About time.
is the Homeland Security Secretary who he should be gone, quite frankly. This is the type of things that people always accuse the United States for pushing agendas using their authority, especially these type of not ministries. What are they called? Divisions or agencies, especially when they're meant to protect our country. But they go ahead and turn around and almost accuse the people they're supposed to be protecting as the ones that are dangerous for society, dangerous for America. But they in turn turn out to be the dangerous ones. Let's read this. And this is a column by Jonathan Turley, who by no means is a conservative Republican, but he is a constitutionalist. He does pretty much state the facts. He doesn't try to inject high emotion into his opinions. The title of this is something that horrified us all. Emails revealed Mayorkas was warned that migrant whipping story was false. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has finally crossed the line into infamy. No, it's not because of the record level of border crossings with millions pouring into the country. It is not the obvious lack of confidence of the rank-and-file officers in Mayorkas. It is not even past controversies like his Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board. Remember that one, headed by some lady who sang a song that sounded like something from The Sound of Music? No, it's because Mayorkas betrayed not just his agents, but his oath to well and faithfully discharge the duties of his office in his handling of the whipping scandal. Some of us previously criticized Mayorkas for his failure to protect the agents falsely accused of whipping migrants along the Texas-Mexico border, even after the president promised that they would be punished before any investigation. Mayorkas joined in with a chorus of critics condemning the agents as an example of systemic racism in the government. Now, according to newly acquired email records, it appears that Mayorkas knew hours before he made those statements that the story was false and that the photographer who took the photos expressly denied that any whipping occurred. Nevertheless, he supported President Biden's and the media's narrative and threw these agents under the proverbial bus. What is interesting about this new evidence is that there is no good spin for a secretary known for almost planet-sized shifts. Either Mayorkas saw the email or he made little effort to discover the truth before trashing his own agents. The email went to various subordinates at the department and was based on public accounts. It would take willful blindness to avoid learning of the true story. The level of duplicity in Mayorkas' conduct is breathtaking. These mounted agents were ordered to the water's edge to stop a huge influx of migrants from Haiti. Some of us contested the narrative early in the scandal, noting that the video refutes the false image created by the photos. The agents were clearly using the reins to direct their skittish horses and not whipping migrants. However, for many in politics and the media, it did not matter because it played into a racial justice claim of the whipping of Haitian asylum seekers. Democrat?
It was the Marlboro Man.
Yeah, right. Democrat leaders joined the media and the mob. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi condemned the inappropriate use of what appears to be whips by Border Patrol officers on horseback to intimidate migrants. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer decried images of inhumane treatment of Haitian migrants by Border Patrol, including the use of whips. Vice President Kamala Harris emoted on The View about how the brutality, quote, invoked images of some of the worst moments of our history, where that kind of behavior has been used against the indigenous people of our country. It has been used against African Americans during times of slavery. Representatives Maxine Walters and Ayanna Pressley described the incident as worse than what we witnessed in slavery and as white supremacist behavior. However, it was the statement of the president that was most disturbing. It was horrible to see, as you saw, to see people treated like they did, horses nearly running them over, and people being strapped. It's outrageous. I promise you those people will pay. There will be an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences. There will be consequences. According to the new evidence acquired by the Heritage Foundation, the administration was already aware that day that the whipping story was false. Shortly after the president's comments on September 24th, 2021, Marcia Espinosa, Assistant Secretary of DHS Public Affairs, emailed Mayorkas and CC'd other DHS leadership to make sure that they saw public stories refuting the claim. Yet 2.5 hours after receiving that email, Mayorkas went to the White House to support the president's clearly false narrative. Indeed, the cabinet member who wanted a disinformation governance board knowingly pushed disinformation, impacting the lives and livelihoods of agents who serve under him. Mayorkas declared how our nation saw horrifying images that do not reflect who we are. We know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism. When later asked about the whipping, the horse whips by a reporter, Mayorkas again said that is something that horrified us all. Mayorkas continued to support the narrative and how conduct of the agents, quote, defies all of the values that we seek to instill in our people. He then promised swift justice with an investigation that would take days, not weeks. In a column, I wrote that the opposite would be true. Because the claim was false and the president would be contradicted, the agency would drag out the investigation and then charge the agents with some minor violations to cover for the president. And that is precisely what occurred under Mayorkas. The agents were quietly cleared of the whipping allegations, but found in violation of department regulations. The president, Mayorkas, and the media were all covered. The only people punished were the innocent agents who spent a year under suspension and had their personal and professional reputations shredded by the President of the United States and the Secretary of Homeland Security. However, the agents simply do not matter in Washington, nor does the due process or basic fairness denied to them by their leaders. They are just some grunts on mounts to be used by the powerful as they see fit. We expect them to answer the call to the literal river's edge, but they remain expendable to political expediencies. The innocence of these agents was immaterial when they became useful cutouts for a narrative of systemic racism. In the end, they had to be punished for something. President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas did not even have the decency to apologize to these agents and their families. They are props, not people. I have stated that I do not agree with the utter failure of Mayorkas to secure the border is grounds for impeachment. He is clearly following a lax policy of President Biden, but such bad policy choices are not matters for impeachment in my view. If there is any measure of decency and responsibility left in Washington, Mayorkas would resign. Ironically, he did precisely what the agents were accused of doing. He and the president flogged these agents in public because they did not warrant any respect or consideration. To use his own words, that is something that should horrify us all.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What would have happened if President Biden stood up and said, nothing happened here. What you saw was fake?
He should have just said nothing at all and waited for an investigation. But when he said something looked horrific, he already indicted, he already punished these people. He just should not have said anything.
It looked horrific, but it wasn't. It was a matter of, basically camera perspective. You swing reins around, and you're 20 feet from the person.
They weren't even swinging reins. It was just gravity and physics moving pieces of leather through the air like anything would when you're on top of something that's moving. And that's the point, is that they made something out of nothing, and then they attach it to racism. President Biden should have said nothing, or he just said, I reserve my comments till after investigation. But that wasn't the narrative.
That would have been in an ideal world.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a caller.
Yes, I see that.
A good article. Thank you.
Yeah.
For bringing that up.
Drive-through Jack to defend Neil Weir. This is interesting. Go ahead, drive-through.
Well, not necessarily.
You know, he's not a Chinese immigrant.
He's not drive-by
necessarily
either.
to defend him.
Or drive-through.
More in essence that, he's partially correct, but not in a way that most people view it. First off, when we're talking about American Samoa, you mentioned that, it's the chiefs, right, that hold the governance of that island. And so the question you need to ask is, how do you become a chief? And the answer is, it's by blood and inheritance. So that directly contradicts the American form of governance. You're not entitled by blood.
But that's America Samoa who asked for that. I think what you're trying to do is tell America Samoa how they should run their government.
No, I'm not telling them nothing. I'm just saying that Neil has a point, not the way that he's presenting it, but the way that it contradicts American governance. It contradicts the Constitution of the United States. It's an anomaly, all right? It's something that they put together. It's a pragmatic thing. We're talking about a small population. But if you try to apply that theory about blood, inheritance, family relations, and, we here in Guam, we say we have a great democracy, but we're not really. We're really blood related. I mean, when you go to the ballot, what do you see? You see the family relations when you go in and try to vote. So, there is a problem that Neil was trying to point out.
I just want to back up. I understand your point of view comes from a point of opinion, but what Neil Weir is doing is trying to enact a Supreme Court decision law on something that is a mere opinion of his. Now, if he wanted to have that opinion, go ahead and write an op-ed in Samoa and tell them that they're wrong and they don't follow what America follows. But what he's doing is detrimental, is more than just stating an opinion. He's filing a case.
Well, here's the problem, okay? It's the same thing with Indian tribes. There's an anomaly that exists that, we allow it to exist because it affects a small percentage of people. But in a larger scale, it is problematic. That's the whole point I'm just trying to suggest there. And it's not an opinion. It's a fact. It's you try to apply this anywhere else in the United States, you'd be laughed out of the county or the town or anything because we don't operate under inheritance and titles when it comes to governance. It's an election. It's a democracy. It's a republic. We choose who we want. But we try to make it so we don't upset the balance. Like we talk about Star Trek, and it's what's prime directive, not to get involved and try not to spare much and let the, I'm just working in an analogy here. And when the U.S. came into these small territories, because territorial development is different from CONUS, the mainland, and then what happened offshore. And, I point to Mr. Leibowitz' book, and he details this in intricate detail on how it differs and the reason behind why it differs, because we're talking about a small population. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but what I'm saying is it isn't right. It isn't right. It's kind of hard to have something exist under the American flag that isn't American or is unconstitutional. And so, I understand what Neil was trying to say. I don't agree with it, but I also respect that he may not be pointing to this, but there is something that's butting heads between having people in government based on blood and inheritance.
But that's not even what he's arguing, though. What he's arguing,
trying to point out.
Yeah, he's not even arguing that.
Question, how do you become a chief? That's the question. How do you become a chief in America?
I don't even think so. I think already they had a treaty with the United States, like Daryl had pointed out, and that treaty included that they weren't going to be seeking anything other status than the territorial status and nationals, not citizens, which means that they understood what they were asking for. So to ask them to change how they deal with their structure is to say that is even worse. It's even worse for Neil Weir.
I'm just saying that it's an anomaly that exists in our relationships between local and federal governments. All right, I'm saying that it's wrong. That I'm saying as a fact that having governance based on inheritance and blood relations is wrong.
But how is that connected to citizenship rights?
Because how else do you become a chief in American Samoa? It's the Mate that does the legislations and the rules and regulations. So the question is, how do you become a chief? It's by blood. That's the only way. If you go to American Samoa right now, can you become a chief? Here in Guam, what's our residence? 1 year?
Yeah, but before I even go further in the rest of your... Before I go further in the rest of what you're trying to say, I don't see a connection at all. It almost we're having a separate conversation, is what I'm understanding.
It's the same. Open your eyes. We're talking about
my eyes are wide open.
Constitutional or not.
All right, thank you. You know what? We have to go to Churchill Downs because we're behind, but it's drive-through. I mean, drive-by. I don't know why I keep saying drive-through. I don't understand.
Just call me by my government name. That'll be what is expedition preparatory food.
But your call is always welcome here. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Jack. All right. Don't go away. We'll be right back right after this brief message.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Churchill Downs, the home stretch. Only a few minutes left, maybe 30 seconds.
Few minutes.
Well, thank you for joining us here. Thank you for all your calls today. We'll be back tomorrow with more Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. Don't forget to vote Pika's Best, Guam PDN. Vote today, tomorrow, all the way up to October 28th, I believe.
Can I interject something?
Go ahead.
Of a historical note?
Absolutely.
You know, the people of American Samoa all those chiefs didn't all vote in 1899. Only 2 main islands, but 2 other islands voted in the 30s.
I hear what Jack is saying, but I'm not sure how it's connected to citizenship.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good opinion,
Let's move on. We got tomorrow again.
Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Drones strike Kyiv. On Laura Cantor, Fox News. Suicide drones laden with explosives hitting Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv Monday morning, sending people running to shelters. Kyiv's mayor Bob Klitzkie said Kyiv's central Shevchenko district was struck. Several apartment blocks were damaged. No word yet on casualties. This comes a week after Russian missiles and Iranian-made drones hit at least 10 regions across Ukraine, killing at least 19 people and wounding over 100 others. President Biden's approval rating still underwater, with the inflation crisis continuing to have a negative effect on Americans. Fox's Lucas Tomlinson has the details.
According to that new Fox News poll, only 33% of voters say they would vote to re-elect President Joe Biden. The Fox News poll says 51%, a majority of voters, say their financial situation is actually worse right now than it was 2 years ago since President Biden first took office. Only 15% said it was better, 33% said it was the same. Only 35% of Americans approve the job Joe Biden has done with the economy, and only 29% approve how he has handled inflation.
When asked about the strength of the U.S. dollar while in Portland, Oregon, President Biden said he worries more about the rest of the world. Meanwhile, the Biden administration will begin using the Trump-era Title 42 public health order to send Venezuelan migrants to Mexico instead of allowing them entry into the U.S. Fox's Griff Jenkins reports from Eagle Pass, Texas.
Now, in the agreement the U.S. has with Mexico, only 200 Venezuelans per day at this crossing will be accepted. We are seeing Venezuelan migrants protesting not being allowed to stay in the U.S. after illegally crossing into the U.S. hoping to apply for asylum.
The Venezuelan migrants are escaping their nation's socialist regime. America's listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications